Welcome to the Power and Sports Mixer, hosted by the Collaborative. You all look amazing, so thank you all for coming. We have a lot in store for you today. We have a great lineup for you guys, so don't hesitate to ask any questions. We have a 360 booth over here, a step and repeat here, and if you take any pictures, if you're gonna post it, tag the Collaborative X on Instagram and use the hashtag Power and Sports 2022. We also have a special guest here. Kendall Starks, and her brand is She-Central, and that's a unisex brand aimed at bringing awareness to women in sports. So if you tap in with her today, she'll be able to get you some custom merch, kind of anything that you want, and she also has some pieces on hand for you to pick up as well. So without further ado, we're about to introduce our amazing host and the people who put this together, Sydnee and Ryan.
Thanks to Corian. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight for the Collaborative's first in-person event. I'm Sydnee Walker, the founder and co-host of the Collaborative, a company focused on connecting the sports and entertainment industry with journalists and PR professionals. I thank you guys all for your support and very excited to host our first in-person show.
Yeah, like Sydney said, thank you all so much for coming. It's really an honor to see so many people here. It's really great to see the support that's come out of this. We've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, and this is our first ever in-person event, so thank you all so much for coming. I'm Ryan, by the way. But yeah, it's great to see everyone's faces here, and we're excited to have you all.
We are joined by an all-star lineup today. We have Christen Lockett, CEO of Lockett-Up PR and account supervisor for laundry service in Wasserman. We have Melissa Proctor, executive vice president and chief marketing officer for the Atlanta Hawks and State Farm Arena. And finally, we have Bob Rathbun, Atlanta Hawks play-by-play announcer. Thank you all for joining us today.
Bob, we'll start with you for our first question. You're a very decorated announcer and broadcaster, and you have been with the for a incredibly long time. What skills and experiences help perfect your craft of storytelling?
Sure, great question. I was so lucky to grow up in that little town. We had, that station was great. But we also had a great college where I went to school, Talbot College, it's a D2 school. But they offered a speech major. And the guy who headed the department said to me, we don't get many guys like you. You know what you want. And I didn't, because I was calling games while I was in school. He said, let's get you a degree in speech that's going to be a little intimate. And we're going to give you independent studies. We're going to give you all kinds of background training and coaching, how the games are played, all of that, to get you ready to broadcast games for the rest of your life. And so, to me, my great good fortune was to become a speech major. I worked on my voice and diction and stage presence, and I was on the debate team, and all these things to get me on stage, to really perfect speech and interact with the camera and all that stuff. And that's how it started. And I think, especially for you all, I really believe that it is the two things that you can do to help your career faster than anything is to learn how to speak well and learn how to write well. If you do those two things, the sky's the limit.
Thank you for sharing that, Bob. It's great to hear. So, Melissa, the Hawks have been one of the most innovative teams in the league, from unveiling the MLK jerseys to the Michelob Ultra courtside seats, and most recently, the schedule release highlighting Atlanta culture. As someone who has a key part in those decisions, how do you push to advocate not only for the city as a whole, but also underrepresented communities?
It's easy. I like to go outside and be a part of the city. And I think a lot of times you may have leaders who kind of do it from an ivory tower and think of what they think would be great. To actually speaking to people like you and understanding what's relevant, what's happening, what's next. And so our target audience for the Hawks are next generation. I'm a little old generation. I'm like mid-generation. And so, for me, the one benefit is we have an owner of our team, Tony Wessler, who has come in from day one and said that we are a civic asset and we exist to serve the community of Atlanta, first and foremost. So that in itself provides the bandwidth to do exactly what I need to do to ensure that we're treating all of our fans in ways that are, with respect, and that we City, especially among African Americans, is a nation. And so we would be remiss to not acknowledge a big part of our fan base through a lot of our efforts, but it's not solely that fan base. And so my challenge very often is thinking about the breadth of what we do as an organization and not being too pigeonholed into any one group, because that's also a challenge I face.
And kudos to you and your team. They do a great job simplifying that. And the Hawks are one of the top teams in the league with just diversity and inclusion. So congrats to you and your team.
Christen, you mentioned that you started your agency as a senior in college, but as an entrepreneur, you've built an impressive brand and clientele roster. How did you build your business really from the ground up and continue to add to your roster year after year?
Honestly, it was just networking and getting knowledge. I think I kind of did it a little backwards. I just jumped into it and didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I made sure I looked up who was doing it. And I spent a lot of time reaching out, cold calling, emailing, asking just for informational interviews, not asking for a job, but just to know, hey, you know, I see you're doing this. How did you do this? What advice do you have? And I think just from finding mentors and people who support me through it, right there. My parents, you know, being super, you know, supportive about it as well. I just had the courage to just try, because, you know, it's like the worst I can do is just have a whole bunch of new knowledge. So I think it's just really networking and meeting people, because as we all know here, right, sports is, I mean, I would say like 100% networking and who you know, right? So just getting as much knowledge as possible on just the industry as a whole, not necessarily just what you want to do, but just figuring out how everything works together and saying, okay, what's kind of missing and what can I bring to that? How can I put these kind of pieces together? So I think this is kind of what I focus on, and just trying to bring solutions.
And Christen mentioned cold calling. Please take that seriously. Everyone up here I've met through social media. So you never know, just slide in someone's DMs and something great can come from it. And earlier we talked about Melissa's book, From Ball Girl to CMO. Bob and Melissa have both found the time to publish books during their career. Bob, you've published Fast Forward Winner, which showcases various thought leaders from all walks of life. And Melissa, you published From Ball Girl to CMO, which showcases the highs and lows of your career journey. Take us through the publishing process and what you learned about yourself during that time. I'll start with you, Melissa.
Okay. Well, I don't read a lot, and I had no desire to write a book. So I'll start there. It's so interesting. So I was working at Turner Broadcasting for 11 years before I came over to the Hawks, and I got laid off when I was 8 months pregnant. But during that process, I started at Turner as an intern. And so throughout my career there, they would always say, hey, intern, I left as a VP. They were like, go recruit people, go speak. And so I would always go talk and share my story, and people loved it. They're like, you should write a book. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so I got laid off. I ended up having my daughter a couple months after I got laid off. And then when she was born, my mother passed away maybe 2 years before my daughter was born. And I had so many questions for my mom that I wished I would have asked her, but I became a different person when I had my daughter. And so I said, you know, God forbid anything happens to me while my daughter's still young, she won't know my story from me. She'll have to do what I started doing, which is asking other people like, hey, what did my mom do? What was this? And so I didn't want to have that happen. So because of that, I said, let me write a blog on Medium, because it was free, so that I could have it somewhere in the internets, and maybe one day when she's older, it would still exist. And so that's what I started doing. And I said I was going to write a chapter a week. A year later, I had 2 chapters. So that was not the winner. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to start writing, you know, like actual chapters in like Word format. And I had a woman that works with me edit it for me. So I said, all right, I'm writing 1 chapter every month. She was supposed to keep me accountable. At the end of the year, I had 2 more chapters. I was real busy. And so I had a chance meeting talking about networking, met someone who said, hey, there's an awesome Black woman who's a publisher here in Atlanta. You should meet her. She's helping me with my book. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of asking for help. So I said, I'd love to meet her. And then that guy went ghost for a year. Randomly saw him at a networking event just like this. And then he was like, hey, did you ever write that book? I was like, nah, I didn't have time. So he ended up setting up a lunch where I actually met the publisher a year after he said it. And the woman was a godsend, and she was amazing. Her name is Renita Bryant, Mind Matters Publishing, based here in Atlanta. And she said, well, you have an amazing story. What do you need? And so she was going to be my accountability partner. She was like, all right, what are we going to do? I was like, every month, every 2 months I'll write 1 chapter. That was my new goal because I knew. And then when a whole year went by and I probably had 3 chapters. And so the blessing in disguise was COVID, because during COVID, I actually had the time to stop and think and write, and her and her team helped me, and we went through the whole process. And one day she was like, so you're done with your book? You know, and I don't want to make you feel bad, but I know you're a marketer. Have you thought about marketing it? And I had not even 1 minute of thinking about marketing because I truly wrote it for my daughter. And so at the end, she kind of helped me. I released it September of 2020 in the middle of COVID. There was no event, there was no gathering. And it's been one of the best things I've ever done in my career. And from it, it's opened so many doors. I'm doing speaking now with CAA and doing keynotes and a bunch of amazing things. But, you know, people are like, how many copies did you sell? I'm like, I don't know. I wrote it for my kid who has no desire to read it, I will add, at 8 years old. But maybe one day she will. But I mean, that was my process. And I know everyone gets at it differently. I'm sure yours was way more buttoned up than mine, but.
Not really. I wrote it mainly to help people. I got so many, like we all do the career days, right? You know, and we get asked about how do you get in broadcasting? How do you do what you do? I want to do what you do. And so I wanted to give them something, you know, and this is sort of a guidebook to the way that I did it. It might not be your path, but at least this is a blueprint of how you can get started. And it's really more of a goal achievement book than anything else. It's divided into like 6 pieces, 3 that you do internally, looking at yourself, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and kind of keep it private till the world is ready so the naysayers don't beat you up and take you down. And then the last 3 chapters are, once you take it to the world, how do you handle the curveballs that come your way to get there in the end? So it's kind of broadcasting based, but it's sort of what I went through, and maybe if you follow these steps, this will happen for you too. So that was sort of the whole germination as to why I wanted to do it, because I'm like you, Melissa, I never for 1 second thought that I would write a book, but it's been good. I think a lot of people have benefited, and for that I'm very happy.
And I'll say the same, because after I wrote it for my daughter, so many people, I'm like, I've learned so much, because it was insights and lessons learned along the way, things from mentors, things that I was like, don't do this, because I did that and it was terrible. So, you know, the watch outs. And I agree. It's been a blessing to see how many people it has helped just open up their minds, young professionals and really career executives, to understand that they can pivot and make changes no matter where they are in their career. Just because you're a seasoned executive or just out of college, I think, you know, it provides something for everyone.
Thank you both for sharing insight into your journey. I know you both have very busy careers, but it's amazing that you were both able to find the time to write a book and inspire people along the way. A little self-plug, where can they find your books?
Hers is a real book. You know, mine is like a workbook, okay? But yeah, you can get it on my website at bobrathbun.com, and you can get it on Amazon too. So. Yeah. Good.
So we're officially 1 year and about 2 months or so into the name, image, likeness, or NIL space. Coming from a branding perspective, Christen, what's the biggest change that you've seen as you continue to work with your clients?
Well, after talking to you, Ryan, I feel like you should answer this question. You know, NIL has been very interesting, as we've all seen. I don't think I ever would have imagined college quarterbacks having Lamborghini and McLaren deals. But I think the positive is that you have these athletes finally thinking about the what else, right? When I was at TCU, I worked in student athlete development. We started that department my junior year. And one of the biggest things we wanted to focus on was just developing the players beyond sport, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And a lot of them struggled with knowing who they were outside of just being an athlete. A lot of times, you know, athletes in here, you know, you don't think about what's next until the game is done. And I think that the positive of NILs is making them think about what else while they're playing, right? And they're having the opportunity to start building connections that'll last them through, you know, beyond their sports career. And I think that it's going to take a little bit, right? I think we've definitely seen some egos emerge, right? And the how do we navigate the entitlement piece of it, right? I have all these deals, then I must go to the league, I must do this, but that may not happen, right? I work primarily with pro athletes, and what I'm seeing is now you have a lot of pro athletes who weren't really social and marketing savvy before NIL, now competing against the players currently at their alma mater, or how can I get this deal? Well, I'm sorry, there's somebody currently at your school that has 80,000 followers and a whole Rolodex, right? So I think from the people who've not been on NIL, which is where I am, just kind of more in the pro space, it's trying to figure out, okay, how can I make you marketable against an 18-year-old that's like viral on TikTok? So it's kind of now moving into the education piece of just whether you're in college, whether you're pro, how can you use your social media? How can you market yourself? How can you differentiate yourself from another player? It may not be the typical pay to post thing. Is it, one of my favorite is a player at SMU. He did a lot of art during COVID. And so his first NIL deal that he did was an art exhibit showcasing all of the art that he created. And I thought that was so interesting, thinking outside of the box, being able to showcase your other skills and talents. Or is it starting a business? Is it, equity plays? Is it real estate, right? So I think that it's such a big beast, and there's a lot of pros, but there's also a lot of things to work out, on both ends of the field.
Thank you so much for your perspective. And I would definitely agree with NIL. There's a lot of things constantly changing, and I think the best is yet to come from it, honestly. But it's been really nice being able to see college athletes finally profiting off themselves and all the hard work they put in.
So all of you have had someone pour into your professional and personal growth throughout your career journey. How can those in the crowd today build a relationship with you moving forward? Christen, I'll start with you.
Well, as Sydnee said, it really does go down in the DMs. I would definitely say my mentor, who actually could not be here today, Lauren, I met through the DMs. I'm so thankful that she loves me, because my first website was definitely verbatim based off of her website. But I reached out to her and was so thankful for her insight and time that she spent just kind of pouring into me. So I definitely encourage you all to find somebody who's not only doing what you want to do, but you can actually see a little bit of yourself in them, like, that you can really confide in, somebody that can really just answer all your questions. I still ask her questions to this day, and it's been 6 years. But really, like, use your social media. I think for our generation, right, like Instagram is kind of in a way like a LinkedIn, right? Like, so many of our young professionals are more so active on Instagram. Like, don't hesitate to send a DM or tweet or what have you. I think one of the most amazing things, and I don't know how many of y'all saw this, but I don't know if y'all remember when Nicole Lynn tweeted, "Hey, I want to meet Rich Paul." I remember that day. And now where is she, right? Like, she is head of football at Clutch, right? And that's just from a tweet, and constantly putting that out there. So I definitely say, like, if you don't get the connection right away, keep going, keep trying, keep reaching out. You'll meet someone.
I think that's a good question, and I'm a realist, and I'm like, I won't be able to connect with everyone in this room. Like, there's a time factor, and I realized that the more senior I've gotten, the more people reach out, and I had a lot of people pouring to me, so I was trying to answer every DM, every email, every LinkedIn post, and it became unrealistic, because that would have been my full-time job. And so honestly, now I have a very different perspective, is I really want to help people who want to be helped. And so often people would reach out and be like, I would love to learn more about you. How did you get to where you are? I'm like, I got a book, y'all. Use Google. Like, there are so many articles and things that are written, but no one takes the time to do their homework. And so one chapter in my book is learn how to be an asset, not a liability when you're networking. Because most times people only look at the I. I want this, I want a job, I want you to tell me I. Never what you can do for me. So asking me what's keeping me up at night, what challenges I have, and even if you don't have the skill set or the expertise, researching an article and sending it to me saying, hey, I read this, maybe this will be of interest, shows such a different side of who a person is in terms of servant leadership or how hungry they are. So even for my job with the Heat, I kept calling them. They told me to stop, and I kept calling, probably harassed them. That wasn't a good look. But now I realize that it really is the people who can rise above, because there's a lot of chatter, a lot of clutter out there. And so think about what differentiates you. A lot of people say, hey, I want to work in marketing and have no idea how to market themselves. And so for me, that's a really, really big kind of flag. So when I see that in someone who takes the time and puts in the extra effort and says the right things, and I'm like, okay, you're serious, you're about something. So I want to be able to come and help and attend this event and pour into others, because I really believe that that's part of my calling. But you can only do so much of that when you have a full-time job and a family and everything else. So be realistic. And one last thing, I have a no jerk policy when it comes to mentorship or meeting people. So not everybody you meet's gonna hit. You know, sometimes your energy may not vibe and you may love them and their job, but that might not be the person for you. And so really taking the time to meet other people and not just bank everything on somebody who may not have your energy, because it's a relationship. It's just like a friendship. You don't walk up to a person and be like, will you be my friend? Not necessarily, but in mentorship, so many people, will you be my mentor? I'm like, I don't know you, you know? And that takes, you said 6 years, like it takes time to build that relationship. So over time it'll come, but definitely be persistent and put in the work. Everything won't come overnight.
That's awesome advice. You know, I tend to look at it from the broadcasting perspective. And I can, excuse me, I can say that in our business, we're willing to help because people helped us. But as I talk to students, it's like, decide what you want to do, you know? It's easy to want to be on SportsCenter. It's easy to want to be, you know, in the arena at an NBA game. But, you know, that's not how you start. You got to start doing high school football. You know, you got to start in Huntsville, Alabama, you know, places like that. So that's what I would say is, before you reach out, kind of have a clue as to what you want to do, and go from there. And I think you'll save each other a lot of time.
I think that was great advice from everyone. You know, for people out there, just be aware of people's professions and schedules. So with college football and NFL coming up, if Christen can't get back to you, just say, wishing good luck to a player. And with Bob and Melissa, the Hawks are playing a game, just saying good luck to the team tonight. I know you're busy. We'll catch up soon. That goes a long way.
Thank you all so much for coming. It's been incredible to see the outpouring of support these last 2.5 years, and finally doing an in-person event after those 2.5 years. It's crazy to see the turnout. So sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for coming. This day sneaked up on us. I know, at least for me it did. And I was like a little bit nervous today, and y'all made it so much easier. The energy in this room is really incredible, and I can tell a lot of great connections are going to come out of this. It's been a pleasure meeting each and every one of you. And if I haven't met you yet, I'm going to make it my mission to before y'all leave. So just know that. But sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all for supporting us. This meant the world to me, and I know Sydnee as well, but sincerely, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for attending our first in-person event. I really appreciate everyone's support. And thank you to Bob, Christen, and Melissa for joining us for our first live panel. I really appreciate you guys. So just thank you, everyone, for coming out, and I hope to see you at many more events.